Good evening. I'm Tina Stewart. I'm the library director here at the Wilmington Memorial Library. Today is September 25th, 2013, the 283rd anniversary of Wilmington's incorporation in 1730. And the library is celebrating this event with our Discover Wilmington series. And tonight we're pleased to bring back a program that we did 16 years ago called Times Gone By and Apple Pie. Our friends at that time was just beginning, and it was their first program, and it was quite a hit. And Karen Campbell, who was our first president of the Friends, is here tonight, and she's now our bookstore manager, and she will be taking memberships to the Friends, as well as selling the popular Wilmington Coloring Book, a collaboration that we did with the Wilmington High School art students and the town curator of the Hardin Tavern, Terry McDermott. So if there's $5, it's a great buy. Wilmington's history and a great coloring book. The event that we held 16 years ago was held on October 23rd, 1997. And so, as we did then, we have invited tonight a panel of longtime Wilmington residents to share their memories of growing up in Wilmington. Before cell phones, before the internet, before Route 93, and bumper-to-bumper traffic on Route 62. So before we take a trip down memory lane, I have just a few announcements to make. Part of the Discover Wilmington series was our Wilmington photography contest. And the photographers did a great job. We have about 40 entries, and the Arts Council, 3 members came this afternoon and selected the winners and the honorable mentions. And I'm just going to announce the winners before we begin. Jean Chang was first place winner. That's number 20. And Roger Tim, that was number 40, was the second place winner. And then the third place winner is Tony Mariano. And I thank the Friends for funding the prizes for these awards. First place was $100, second place $75, and third place was $25. But the Arts Council thought there were so many good entries, they also had selected some honorable mentions. Number 13 photographer was Miss Messina DiPietro. Number 14, Diane McGuire. And number 10, Roy Crowell. And number 24, Robert Mariello were honorable mentions. And my staff was so enthusiastic, they wanted to pick staff picks. So Marissa Zamowski, Joanna Breen, and Curtis Wine picked 3, and they're listed here as staff picks, and you can see which ones they are, their favorites of the photography contest. I'd also like to thank the Friends for baking some homemade apple pie tonight. Since again, Time's Gone By and apple pie, as you know, the Baldwin apple, we're commemorating that as well tonight. So enjoy apple pie after the program. So again, just to remind you, if you're a member of the Friends, thank you for all your support. We couldn't do all the wonderful programs that we do at the libraries without having the Friends. And if you're not a friend, please consider joining and just see Karen after the presentation tonight. And please, we'd love to have you join Friends of the library. It's a great way to support all we do here. And I want to thank WCTV for taping tonight. Jim Buckley, thank you for being here. And as you see in the background, the digitized photographs of some of the Bond collection photographs from the Hardin Tavern are on our website. And we also have recently digitized some of our historical programs that were on videotape by WCTV over the years, and you can also see those now on the website. So this is really a wonderful resource, because one of the missions of the library is to preserve local history, and we're going to be doing that tonight with by taping this program and hearing you some of the memories of our panel. And I want to thank our former town manager, Mike Kyra, for being here tonight. And he's going to moderate the program and take us down memory lane with our panel. Mike?
Thank you very much, Tina. Welcome to all of you. It's a pleasure to be back. I want to acknowledge right away the boss, Jeff Hull, is here in the back. He's doing such a good job that I'm a little bit resentful of that. But it's wonderful to put on a uniform again. I can't remember the last time I wore a suit, but it's certainly good to be here with everybody. If you look at some of these photos, if you really look real close at the one with the Eames house, you can see Bob Palmer up there. We have a wonderful panel here today, and I want to thank Tina for putting this together. This is a venerable group. It's I'm especially grateful to be here because it's the first time I've been the youngest person among the in a long time. They all have a series of questions that they were presented with, so it's really kind of easy. I do also want them to address one question, which I've asked a number of people since I've gotten here, and that is, what is the definition of a townie? And everybody says right away, you had to be born here, but that's fine, but what if you were born here and you haven't been here for 40 years and you come back? I mean, is there anything that can define a townie? So that we might be thinking about that as we go forward. We're going to ask each member of the panel to speak about some of these questions, and we'll go right down the line. Starting with the oldest first, Jack Cushing, and then we'll continue to try to go through all of these questions and give you a chance at the end to correct their memories and to see if some of their historical facts need to be corrected at all. So let me first welcome Paul Carpenter and Barbara Carpenter and Charlotte Stewart, Patty Ward and Jim Durkee and Jack Cushing, and I'm sure you appreciate the fact that they've given up their time to be here. It's interesting, we should get on with the program, right? But one of the things I always think about the town of Wilmington is you really have to be careful what you say to somebody because everybody is related. Right? Everybody is related. In this case, of course, we have Charlotte Stewart, who is related to Barbara, her sister, and of course Barbara's husband. And Charlotte, through marriage, is related to a Palmer. Patty Ward's maiden name is Palmer, but she's not related to those Palmers. Tina Stewart, the library director, is married to a Stewart whose mother was a Palmer. It just goes on and on. But we're ready. So the questions we're going to ask, just to get us started, is to introduce yourselves, if you would, and your own relationship with the town of Wilmington. Tell us what part of town that you grew up in, whether or not your house has been replaced by Route 93. If not, where have you lived in the town? When did you come to Wilmington? A little bit about your own family background, and then you can go right into telling us a little bit about the schools and your school memories. So we'll sort of combine that to start, if that's okay. We'll talk about the where you grew up, and then your own memories about school in the town of Wilmington. And let's start with Jack, if that's okay.
Okay. I was actually born on 10 Jones Ave. The house is still there. I went to school at I only went to 3 schools in town, the Mildred Rogers, the Bazell, and then on to the high school for 6 years. What else to do?
Which high school was it?
Wilmington.
Oh, okay.
No, it wasn't the Swain. That was shut down.
Well, the schools were the Mildred Rogers and the Bazell, which are no longer here.
Bazell is still here.
Well, not as a school. Not as a school. Any special memories from the school days? Any teacher? Anything that was recurring all the time with you?
Well, I had my most pleasant memory after everything was over was my first day in school at Mildred Rogers. I was with the principal, and her name was Agnes Daly. And the very first morning, this fellow came into the room, and she wanted to know if anybody knew who he was. It was his first day on the job. And I almost broke my legs raising my hand. And she finally called on me and she said, and who is it? And I said, that's my father. And she says, no, it isn't. It's Mr. Cushing. And I got to call my father Mr. Cushing for 12 years. So in my dealing with high school kids right now, as soon as anybody calls me Mr. Cushing, I correct them right off the bat. My name is Jack. But I had very fond memories of being in the school system here. One, having that benefit of having your father as a teacher for 6 years in the phys ed part of it. But it's just the schools and the opportunities that we had. It was just unbelievable. This was just a great town to live in. And I got to enjoy it for 12 years in the school system. And I've lived here my whole life. I just passed my 70th birthday. And the only time that I lived out of town for 6 months, I lived on 150 Salem Street in Tewksbury, which is about 300 yards from the town. So other than that, my whole career has been, I worked in the town. I was with Sweetheart Plastics for years. My former boss from the DPW is here tonight. So all my time has been spent in the town of Wilmington, and I don't think I'd ever want to live anyplace else. And I totally enjoy the kids that are here. I know that some of your kids and your grandkids, we have the greatest kids in town, so I enjoy the time.
All right, thanks, Jack. That's great. That's great. I know I was talking to Jack's wife Sandy earlier, and she told me, like Jack said, that he spent 6 of the best years of his life in high school there. So.
That was 7th and 8th grade, too.
All right. Our next guest is a longtime resident who can give us his intro, if you would, Jim Durkee. Jim?
If you'll forgive me, I have to look at my notes because my memory is shot to you know where. I grew up in North Wilmington. The first house that I lived in either is not there anymore or it has been modified greatly because I can't recognize it. I lived there until I was 4 years old on Andover Street. Moved up the street to the second house was about a half a mile up Andover Street at the junction of Woburn Street across from the Browns Crossing water pumping station. That house is no longer around. There are 2 houses on that lot. And my father bought that house from John Hathaway for $2,000. That was a few years ago. I went to the Whitfield School for grades 1 through 5. Grades 1 and 2 were in the same room on the right-hand side on the bottom floor with Miss Notting. She gave us the basic reading, writing, and arithmetic. 3rd grade, more of the same. I think it was Miss Doucette. 4th grade was, I believe, Miss Littlehale. And she came from Tingsboro, if I'm correct. And she did something which was unusual. Besides all the writing, reading, and arithmetic, she introduced us to classical music, which was something I had never had in the grade school before. 5th grade was Miss Horton. She was a little strict, but that's the way it goes. One thing I remember about the Whitfield School was that across the street, there was a big stone, large stone, with a plaque on it. And the plaque commemorated the preaching of George Whitfield. He was an itinerant preacher, and he, in the 1700s, roamed all over New England. And I saw that in another story that he had gone as far south as Pennsylvania. But I don't know what happened to that plaque, but after I'd been in Whitfield School about 3 years, it seemed to disappear. Don't know where it went. Let's see. 6th grade was at the center school. Beside what was the library and is now the 4th of July building. And the classes were with students from other parts of town. For the first time, I'd always been from the North Wilmington group. I don't remember what we were taught in the 6th grade. 7th and 8th grades were held at the Daniel T. Gazelle School up the street from the high school. In the 7th grade, they had pamphlets, which made an impression on me. They described various jobs and professions, and what level of education would make you eligible for such an occupation. I decided at that point that I wanted to be an electrical engineer. I didn't, but that's what I And in one of those years, I sang in a musical group. I am no singer. Okay? But they took it for what it was worth. High school, we had several teachers that I thought were excellent. Sylvia Nielsen taught ancient history and Latin. She was capable of making second-year Latin almost interesting. Now, you've got to be quite a teacher, in my opinion, to make second-year Latin interesting. She made, I loved her ancient history class, and I knew that I had to visit Italy, Greece, and Egypt sometime in my life because of what she had taught us. She joined the Army in my sophomore year, at the end of our sophomore year. And I believe that's when she headed for the Army. I also liked Miss Marlin, Laura Marlin. She taught English and American history. She was a little strict, but she was very good. Miss Fiorello, she taught chemistry and physics. I think 2 or 3 of the girls who were sitting in the first row or second rows of at least one of her experiments, if they're in this room, they probably have a vivid memory of what happened. I'll leave it at that. One of our mathematics teachers, and I believe his name was Mr. Campbell, he taught trigonometry. In the spring, he decided that a friend of mine and myself had had enough book learning and we should get some practical experience. So he found us out to a surveyor to get some practical experience. And we helped survey the land behind the high school, what's now the high school, and behind the Roman house. And then he, after on weekends, that was during the week, when instead of all of the trigonometry class, we would go out and work with the surveyor. On the weekends, he would have us work for him, and we would get paid because we weren't doing the schoolwork. So we did schools in Reading, and we did a housing development in Wakefield with him. We got paid. School activities, I don't remember the activities in school, to be perfectly honest. Sports, however, I do remember. The coach, which not many of you know, informed me that I didn't have the proper attitude. And he was correct. There were tryouts for baseball, football. They were sort of interesting because there were 3 of us he made us go out on the common and throw the football around. And one of my friends could kick the football half the length of the common. The other fellow could pass it half the length of the common. And if I knew he was gonna kick it soon enough, I could be down there to catch it. Now, this coach came to us immediately after this. We had been working with these other people who were interested in being on the football team. He informed us that we had to join the football team. Well, one fellow said, I work afternoons, I can't be on it. The other fellow said, I have a heart problem, I can't be on the football team. I said, look, I'm not going out there with these, I weighed 120 pounds. I'm not going out there and get killed by one of these guys out there. So I'm not gonna be there. He said, you don't have the proper attitude. He said, your father was a quarterback. He said, if he wanted to go out there and get himself killed, that's his. He also had me box in the lightweight division, obviously. And I boxed a couple of times. And then I had to go for my eye exam with an ophthalmologist on Beacon Street in Boston. When I got there, we had a conversation, blah, 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 what are you doing? And I happened to mention that I had just boxed a couple of times. He said, what are you doing? Are you crazy? He said, you could be blind. He said, your eyes aren't all that great to start with, and you get hit in the right spot, you're gonna be in trouble. So obviously, there was no more boxing for me. We had basketball. That was another disaster, but I won't even go into that one. Hockey was good. Unfortunately, I broke my collarbone. Other than that, it was good.
Let's take a break.
Okay.
All right, and I do want to have people mention any of the sporting activities that they were involved with as well. You know, we'll come back to that.
Okay.
And we'll also
Sorry.
no check on that state ethics violation that took place when they had you working on weekends.
Michael, that was then.
That was then.
That was then. A lot of things were different.
That was then when she opened the trunk and put all the booze inside.
I didn't
And
say
you got
that.
a job.
No.
I don't know about that. Okay, Patty?
Well, I was born on 21 Jones Avenue, just down the street, a little bit before, quite a few years before.
I didn't say anything.
But my family came in 1916 and to a camp, as everything around the lake was, and ended up with a very nice home. In fact, for a while, it was Linda Fulton's daycare center. Family had it for 50 years, and it's been sold probably 4 times since 1966, but it is still there. I went to school at the Silver Lake School, the first and second. The portable school, which was beside it where the bathhouse is now, third and fourth. And then I went to the center school where everybody got to meet, from 5th and 6th, and then the Gazelle, 7th and 8th, to the Swain, the 9th and 10th, and then the new old school, the one they're tearing down, for 11th and 12th. So I kind of made the rounds of the schools, but we had some great teachers, and it was an experience that I think if the kids today really look to their teachers, anybody that went in Wilmington got a good education. I think they still are.
You remember any particular highlight for you in the school? Prom queen or anything like that?
What was that?
You were my prom queen. This is one of
Yeah,
them.
yeah. Well, I was the Strawberry Blonde, and I danced with a fellow, Donnie Fleming. That was in the 2nd grade. I was the Strawberry Blonde because I had access to a gown that an older sister had. So, no, I played freshman basketball, and we had an undefeated team, and Irene Brennan was always bragging about her freshman team, the group of us were there. I do remember sometimes in the Swain during the spring, we could go swimming instead of dancing in the lower level. But at that time then, we didn't need a high school either. You know, it was, we were just looking to spend money. But, no, I think all through school, for me, it was a great experience right here in Wilmington.
So we have 3 townies, all 3 born in Wilmington, and your family came in 1916.
16.
Jim, when did your family first move here? Do you know what year that was?
Oh, one grandmother came in 1872, and I don't remember.
That's good enough. You may Jack?
Late 1930s.
Late 1930s. Charlotte Stewart, isn't it?
No, I'm not a townie.
No? How come?
Well, we came to Wilmington in 1932, and I remember all our mother and father's friends through the years saying, "Why did you ever move way out there?" Well, land was cheap, and it was the Depression years. My father bought a lot of land for, I think, $100. He dug out our cellar. He mixed the cement, poured it, and we moved here in 32, and Barbara was 2 and I was 3. She just told her, right?
Yeah. But she has finally admitted that you're younger than
That is an issue. We had, our running water was a pump. We had environmental plumbing. Outhouses were really quite common in Wilmington in the 1930s and even into the 1940s. When I was in high school in 1947, some of our most distinguished students put an outhouse on the roof of the Swain School. If they had been less distinguished, they probably wouldn't have graduated. We played with our neighbors. We pretty much stayed in our neighborhood. We never went across West Street where the Palmers and the Gammonses lived. And they never came over to our side of the street.
Yeah, I can see why.
We were afraid we were going to become related. Our toys were our imagination. We played hopscotch and do we my notes here? We played hopscotch and dodgeball. We played in the woods, we played house, we played with our dolls. We had very simple toys. We had jacks and we had pickup sticks. And we played marbles by the hour. And we had some kind of a game where you made a stick and you hit it. And Peggy. And we loved that game. We played with our neighborhood children, the people we always played with the Hitchcock girls, Velma and Eileen and Joan the baby. When in the winter, the boys dammed up the field where Woodbriar is now, and we had a wonderful skating area, and we skated all winter from November until I think March. It really was colder then.
Let me stop you now, Charlotte. See, we're getting into some of the other questions, and we'll have everybody
All right.
talk about that. But I'm sure many of you also, depending upon when you moved here, experienced the same thing that Charlotte did with your relatives, where she said, where are you going? What are you doing moving up there? Where is it? And we moved in 1958 from Newton, and the relatives just didn't understand why we keep packing up and going to some godforsaken place that nobody knew where it was. So that was, but it was certainly fortuitous for us that we came. Barbara?
Cheryl just did that, so I'm gonna do the school when you come back around.
You can do the schools?
The schools.
Well, you can talk about the schools now, sure.
Okay. We went to the Maple Middle School, and it was located off of Lowell Street, near where the 99 restaurant is. We all lived on West Street and West Hill Avenue near the Reading line. The kids from both sides of West Street, the Drews, lost the line, wait a minute. From both sides of West Street. The families that lived on West Street were the Gammonses, the Palmers, and the Drews. Wavy Drew was the first woman in Wilmington, and her 5 sons enlisted in the armed services at the break of World War II, and her youngest son, Elmer, was killed on D-Day. Then we had the Eli's, the 6 Hitchcocks, Barbara Ford White, who worked here at the library, and the Balcons, and the Moore sisters, and Louise McDevitt Wallen. We all played together. We would all meet at John Eli's old store. He was the father of Mike and John, who now own Eli's Country Store in Wilmington, so we really had them first. We walked up Lowell Street past a large pasture full of cows, who were lived 2 stories now, and that farm eventually became the family home of the Downs family. And we used to, stop, and our mother always said, don't go in the field with the cows. I can remember my mother saying that almost every day. We would cross the street, and there was a blacksmith shop there, and we would go in, and he'd be shoeing. We wanted to see what horses he was shoeing that day, and he always was busy. And then on the other corner was this old Swain house where Henrietta and May Swain lived, and they were single ladies, and they were school teachers here in Wilmington. The Swain School was named after them. They were really the ones that really started a good education for Wilmington in the school system. And on the other corner was the Henny Penny store. Henny Penny is like that, related to the sergeants and all that way back when. And they had a little convenience store there. So we had quite a history of people who became prominent in Wilmington.
Why don't we take a break there, Barbara? And I want to ask one question of the group here, because you said something that I never knew. How many people knew that there was a school where the 99 restaurant is today?
In behind, up a side street.
1, 2, 3,
My wife went to it.
4.
My sister went to it.
So
It's still there.
that's great information, because as you can see, most
It's
people had
affordable, just like
absolutely no idea.
Yeah, it's still there.
It's still there. It's the BFW, not the BFW, but the.
You go up that
Oh, okay, so the DAV
Yeah,
was a school.
yes, it's a portable school, just like the one that's
That's
so
like the
like.
one at the lake.
Okay, all right, that's great.
Just
Well,
like we took better care of things in East Wilmington.
there you go, there you go.
Oh, we knocked it down and built a boat.
All right. Getting a little rowdy here, Paul, you're up.
Well, I don't think I've had such an exciting life with these people. But I was born in,
You're not gonna let me finish my story yet?
Well, you're going into the next group. So I think we want to just, we'll come back.
yeah, sure.
Go ahead, Paul.
And I was born in Beacon Street, right across from the park down there, the Rotary Park.
I always have.
And let's see, I was one of 10.
Which one, Paul?
I was the 8th son of a 7th son. I was the 7th son.
All right, I
That's
believe
right
it.
there. And I had one sister, she was the oldest. And I attended the Whitfield, not the Whitfield, but the Walker School for 4 years. They had 4 grades there, first, second, third, and fourth. And that was a nice term.
They always have the best teachers, yeah.
Yeah.
They did.
Let's see, who was it?
The Walker School.
What were your memories in school, Paul? What do you remember most about being in school? Did you go to Wilmington High School?
Yes, certainly did.
And were you involved in activities, sports?
Well, I played football for 4 years, and the other sports I couldn't because I was working part-time. So that's what. But getting back to Beacon Street, there was 10 in my family, and down the street where the golf is, there were 11. And then across from them were the Woodses. We call them the fighting Woodses. There was 9. So we had enough kids in that neighborhood. That's not including Columbia Street. So we had enough kids in that neighborhood. If they all went to the Walker School at the same time, it'd fill the building. So, but we didn't produce any governors or presidents or anything like that. But we did have one person, Ray Wood, who became, he was an admiral in the Coast Guard. And we had Henry Porter, who was the postmaster. So, and Joe Woods was a selectman. So we produced quite a bit.
It's a good group. All right, let's go back around and go with Jack. Maybe you can talk, some of you have already spoken about your activities in school, but we can expand upon that if you haven't, and we can talk about what kinds of things you did for fun. You know, I know Silver Lake was a particular focus point for a whole lot of people for a whole lot of reasons way back then, that whole lake area. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about some of the things you might have did for fun back in those days.
Well, Silver Lake was, it actually almost made you feel like you lived in 2 towns, because during the summer months, Silver Lake, your friends all primarily came from Charlestown, Boston, and then they were there for the summer. And of course, the rite of passage for a young guy was to swim to one side of the lake and back again, and then you were okay then. But at that time, there were no restrictions on the lake, so there was fishing, which really wasn't that good, but a lot of water skiing. And I did a lot of water skiing on Silver Lake as a kid. Nowadays, you can't have any motor on the lake. But the biggest thing is probably come November, which for some reason it was cold at that period of time. From November to April 1st, you skated on Silver Lake. And that's where a lot of the activities that you were involved in, the sports that I was involved in, hockey, and of course the great American Wilmington pastime at the time was speed skating. I hated every minute of speed skating. And I played hockey with the 2 Backward brothers that also hated speed skating. So when they would be at the rink at Chestnut Street practicing for the speed skating events, myself and the 2 brothers would sneak over the other side of the pond and play hockey. So it was quite a place, and skating wasn't just like as it is today, that it was, you would go there, but of course at 3 o'clock when you get out of school, you'd skate in the afternoon, and you'd play hockey. Go home and have supper, and then you go back to the lake at 6:30, 7 o'clock, and you'd be out there at 8:30, 9 o'clock just skating around the lake. So it was a pretty wild time, you know, for kids athletically. You had a lot of things to do. So.
For those of you who don't know, when Jack mentioned the speed skating, the club on Chestnut Street, it's where the food pantry is. So right behind there was where the skating rink was, and there were many Northeast championships. And people like a friend of mine, Lenny Galvin, is a great skater, of course, the Backmans. And the greatest of all was Jeannie Ashworth, who in 1960 won a bronze medal at the Olympics.
She was our first Olympic athlete.
First of a few.
But I wanted, just a quick thing,
Sure.
one of the things too, that when we were putting together a thing for somebody on the history of Wilmington, I came across a picture of, actually it was my wife, and she was skating with her girlfriend on the Cranberry Walk at Rotary Park. And they had the Walker School in the background. I think we had come out of the whole sun. And the caption underneath it was that They were skating on the ice that the following weekend would be the North American Speed Skating Championships. So it's not only that the kids from Wilmington skated in these,
Right.
Wilmington hosted the nationals probably 2 or 3 times in my youth anyways.
Jim, I know you talked about the sport activities that you're involved in. Anything you want to add in terms of the lake or?
Are we doing for fun?
Let's do it for fun. Sure. Tell me about the fun times you had.
For us,
Not all of
skating, ice skating was great. Sledding was great. Skiing was great. Roller skating, movies, bicycling, going to the places down at the bowling alley after the theater. We played baseball and football in a field on Andover Street, which was property attached to the pumping station. We had acres of nearby ice. Went from, the ice was there because Don Foster used to flood in the fall. He would flood the area from Salem Street where the old railroad bridge was, all the way to Andover Street. We had acres and acres of skating.
It's road because now, right?
Well, it was well fields then too. But he still flooded the other areas. And he trimmed them. What he did was trim the whole thing down to about this length of grass, etc., and then flooded it.
Before Conservation Commission.
Let's see. In fact, you could skate from Andover Street, where we lived, all the way to Martin's Pond in North Reading, if you were careful.
Where did you sled, Jim?
What?
You said you went sledding. Where do they sled in those days?
Sledding. We went on the hills on Andover Street primarily. But we also went over to John Hathaway's house and went down the hills behind his house. And we skied there sometimes too. And don't do it at night.
All right, let me go to Patty, and we try to move this a little bit so folks might be able to comment. Patty, any activities in mind that you could talk about?
Well, of course, at the lake, we always would get there, those of us that grew up in the area, and we'd spend the day. We'd take a lunch. This was a baby beach. This was long before the town beach was developed in the late 40s. But as far as talking about Wilmington, everybody having a place to go, having the lake, most people, other than in the lake area, weren't allowed to go to the lake because in the summer we were infested with all these out-of-towners that would come. And even to us at the lake, it was a little intimidating because they would come if they were on Grove Avenue or King Street or wherever their cottages were, but they would all meet. And of course, for one of us, 2 of us to go to Tattersalls or something, it'd be 5 or 6 kids all together that were city kids. You know, it was a little intimidating to us. But still, we all became friends. Most of them live here now, you know. They either built or winterized and stayed, or their children did as they grew older. But no, the lake area for us was fantastic. It provided us with skating in the winter and swimming in the summer. And somebody mentioned being out in the sticks. I had relatives in Revere, and they used to tease me that they rolled up the sidewalks at 5 o'clock at night, you know, because we were in the sticks and so forth.
Charlotte?
We went to the movies a lot. I don't know if anybody remembers there was a movie theater right in Wilmington
Can you
Square.
tell folks where it was? Can you tell folks where it was if they don't remember?
It's right where the, next to where the gymnastic place is.
Right, with Cook's skating, yeah.
Yeah, the
Right.
sign's still up on the building.
And we used to go to the movies all the time. They have 3 movies. They have a serial, a newsreel, a short movie, and then the main movie. And on Wednesday nights, usually Shirley Temple. We grew up with Shirley Temple, and Shirley Temple movies were always on Wednesday night. They gave dishes away, so that if you were a regular attendee, you could acquire a set of dishes for
That's a deal.
or mismatches. Below the theater was a bowling alley. I think there were, 6 alleys? 6 alleys. There were no automatic pin setters, and if we both went bowling, quite often we'd set up our own pins.
That's great.
We had a high school bowling league for a while. We went to the movies a lot in Reading. We'd go to Boston. We never went to the lake until we were, I think it was 17, I was 17 or 18 before I went to the lake. And then we didn't go to Baby Beach, we went to Danger Beach.
Yeah, well, that's where the.
This is because Patty's crowd wouldn't let you in. Let me ask Barbara, to anything, you wanted to add a few fun things that you did.
No, pretty much the same as with Charlotte. We did things together, you know, except we all played basketball in school. And Barbara was better than I. And then when we were seniors in high school, when Miss Greenwood came, she introduced softball to the girls. And we had a softball team. I think we maybe played 4 games. I have no idea how we got to the games, because the boys had buses, but the girls had nothing. I mean, that's the way it was. And the boys had a locker room too in the high school, and the girls had no locker room. Wasn't that just, yeah.
And there weren't any girl sports.
No girls sports
During
field
World War
hockey.
II.
Yeah, field hockey was the only thing.
There were boy sports, but not girl sports.
Paul, any activities that you recall you and your friends taking part in besides school?
Yeah, we used to go up the Silver Lake. We spent quite a bit of time up there, swimming in the lake, me and my dog, and my brothers, and my friends. And we played a lot of handball.
Handball.
Tex Johnson and
Yeah,
the crowd there.
On the
We used to play
base
that.
of the old house.
But we also there was numerous swimming pools and holes in town. You'd never recognize them now. But there was a little down on Adams Street, right where you live, Charlotte, that little brook there. Well, and back there was a hole we used to call it Warner's Brook. And we used to go in there and swim all the time in the brook. And also down to James Bridge, we used to swim in there. Bloodsuckers little.
We didn't go to Jake's Bridge.
Jenks Bridge.
Jenks
Did you go to Jenks Bridge?
Yeah.
You don't remember, but you were there. We're going to ask, I'm going to ask like a lightning round here, quick questions, and I just want to get one answer from everybody. What was the popular hairstyle? You notice it's a different kind of hairstyle up here tonight, but when you were back in school, what was the popular hairstyle?
With one group, it was a flat top, with the other group, it was a DA.
Flat top and DA. Jim?
I have no idea.
You have no idea. You were born that way, right? Daddy?
Well, I just had a friend visiting and we went through the yearbook, and after looking at this, I went back through the yearbook and everybody just had curly hair. There was no particular style. Some had little page boys, some just had it curly. The girls, it didn't seem to be any long, there was no straight hair or anything like that. It was just well-kept curly hair.
Charlotte, Barbara, is that how you remember
Page
the
boys,
hair?
page boys.
And we used to
Straight,
curl it.
turned under.
Yeah.
Barbara used to
curl
do
it.
pin curls.
Pin curls.
Yeah.
Pin curls, yeah. And if you went for a perm, you got there and they put long wires and rods in your hair, and then they plug the machine in.
You'd be reported to DSS.
My spot on 5, you better unplug that and start running.
Paul, do you have a favorite haircut?
Yeah, so everybody had a pompadour.
Pompadour.
High, long.
Big wavy hair.
Okay. Like Kooky, Ed Burns, that
Yeah.
all right. And let me ask you, Paul, I'll start with you, Paul. What was your favorite music in those days, the songs? Can you remember one that stood out that everybody
Well, it was shortly after the war. And it was Bing Crosby, and Barry Como, and Don't Sit Under the Apple Tree. And I'll Be Seeing You songs like that.
Barbara?
It was the big band era, all the big Sammy Kaye, Tommy Dorsey, all them, go in the Norman Beaver Park.
Yeah.
Go there.
Norm Bigger Park.
You know, totem pole. I can remember going to see sing and sway with Sammy Kaye and Tommy Dorsey.
Charlotte?
It was a big thing to go to the totem pole. You could go into the RKO in Boston, and we did, to see the big bands. I remember when Frank Sinatra first came to Boston, and all the senior girls skipped school.
Yeah.
I was a senior, so I didn't, but they all skipped school to go into Boston to see Frank Sinatra.
Patty?
It was like Blueberry Hill and things like that. And, swing and sway things. Dancing music.
Jim, I know you didn't remember the hair part, but how about the song?
In the 1940s, I liked big band music and continued to like it into the 60s. And that's all I remember.
Jack?
Anything by the Platters?
Was there any particular event that had an impact upon you and your family back then? Any personal impact on the family, or anything that you remember that you would want to share with us? Something that
Oh, December the 7th.
December the 7th. Yeah.
December the
Grow
7th,
up.
and on December the 8th, we were in the Gazelle school then. I was in the 8th grade, and the superintendent of the schools used to be at a big assembly down in the high school, in the gym. Fortunately, it was dry. Yeah, I can't remember why, but I think he was very frightened, and we were very frightened too. We were walking down.
Of course, many of us remember being in school when JFK was killed and all of what was going on there. Any other remembrances?
JFK for me, because his personal aide at the time was somebody that I knew very well, Dave Powers, who was Paul Lynch's brother.
Paul Lynch, the former police chief.
Yeah, and it was kind of, you know, family kind of hard.
Did everybody hear that? I'm not sure if you all heard it. Jack mentioned that when JFK died, he was particularly struck by that. Dave Powers was an aide, and Dave Powers was the brother-in-law of Paul Lynch, who was a longtime police chief at the time, and close to the Cushing family.
I think the thing that made the most impression was the Coconut Grove fire. Because I was in the 3rd grade and Mildred Rogers was the 4th grade teacher and principal of the Lake Schools at the time. And James was our janitor, James Fitzgerald, of the 4 Fitzgerald boys that burned in that fire. And it just devastated the whole town, but especially us, because, you know, there was such an immediate knowledge of, you know, the teacher was gone and the janitor was gone, and it just, you know, they lived right there in the neighborhood there. In fact, I ended up buying the house that the Fitzgeralds lived in. But it just devastated all of us kids because it was, you know, a close happening.
How soon after did they name the school for Mildred Rogers?
I think it was shortly after that they added on 2 more rooms, because the Lake School, the portable, they added on 2 more rooms, and that's when I think they named it, probably a year or 2 later, the Mildred Rogers School.
That's interesting. Anybody else can think of a particular connection with a world event or a tragedy or something with Wilmington back then?
Well, I can remember that the Depression of the 1930s had an effect on our family. When the Second World War started, I wanted to join the Navy. And my folks, you had to have if you were 17, you had to have your parents okay, and they said, no way. I said, when you're 18, you can do what you damn well please. So 18, I joined the Army, because the Navy wouldn't take me. And that was a very wonderful experience for me. It made me go into the profession I ended up with for my life, and it made me want to travel a little more.
Patty, you were gonna add something?
I also, it was before me, but the polio epidemic in '29 was it affected a lot of people, but I had a brother and a sister, both with polio at that time. And my sister was just starting to walk. She was 13 when she contracted polio, and she was just starting to walk again when I was born. She was 18, and it was quite a trial for the family, and my brother had, so they thought at first that he had meningitis because it affected his lungs and things, but it was polio, and he did much better than Ethel did coming out of it, but he always, when he got tired, he would shake and so, and that affected a lot of people.
Do you remember, were there many families that had children with polio?
I think there were quite a few. I know Mrs. Clemens, who lived right on the lake, but when she was younger, probably older than they were, she had polio. And I think there were a lot of people back then that, you know, if you look back in your history, there's family members that did.
Because access for the disabled now is so very different, but what was it like then? Were there a lot of barriers? Was it very difficult for those of you who had family members that were disabled in some way?
Well, there wasn't much out there. I know the kids were both in Children's Hospital, and my mother used to complain because even back then, they owned their home, even though it was still in the cottage stages. So there was no help for them because they owned the property. And then mom would take Ethel into Boston for different treatments, but she wouldn't let them put braces on. She did all the massaging, and that's what got her back walking again. It just weren't the facilities.
Mm-hmm.
The kids used to take her down in a wagon down to the lake and swim with her for the exercise of swimming in the water, the exercise.
My father and his younger sister both had polio very early on, and I guarantee you there was nothing to do. In 1955, there was another epidemic, and at Children's Hospital, we had a heck of a lot of patients, an awful lot of patients.
All right, let me ask another quick, Paul, do you want to add something? Sure.
I was gonna say what affected me during the Second World War, when it started. I had, it was coming from a large neighborhood with a lot of big families there. The golfers, they drafted 5 of them. Or they joined, and then my family was 6.
Wow. That's tremendous. We all have a tremendous debt of gratitude.
When we were in high school, when I was in high school, there were no older boys.
Really?
As soon as they turned 17, they left high school and joined the service.
Yeah.
I wasn't just all the boys either, because my father actually joined the series with 4 of us.
Probably, yeah, those are gigantic because I'm sure that many of you have, if not yourselves, family that were in the military. A quick question, just a little lightning round again, Jack and everyone. What part-time job did you have? Or did you have a part-time job going through school, high school, for example? What was your first job? Where did you work?
I went from being a paper boy to working at Stevens Supermarket to...
Can you tell people where Stevens Supermarket is? How many people remember where Stevens Supermarket is? Oh, quite a few, but there are still some that don't.
Across the street from Silver Lake.
Right. Where Silver Lake Pharmacy was, which is not there either.
It's empty now.
No, it's a good sign.
Anybody is a tenant where,
And then And having family in the carnival business. I worked at the carnival, so.
Well, that's pretty good. Paperboy and Carnival, all up to
Steven Super.
and Steven Supermarket. Jim,
I had actually quite a few.
how did I know?
At age 12, I picked blueberries, weeded gardens, sold magazines, and mowed lawns. Age 13, delivered the little son 15 miles a day by bicycle. And then on the Sundays, on the weekend, I delivered the Sunday Globe from Buck Brothers in North Wellington. Age 14, I had general yard work and grounds maintenance for Mr. Cairns on Andover Street. Age 15, yarding and hauling logs for small lumber mills with William Findell using 2 Belgian workhorses and a truck. Age 16, water clerk and then messenger for the Boston Music Company in the summertime. Age 17, sanded school desks for Wellington School Department. In the spring, I helped the surveyor.
Jim, you were either very industrious or you couldn't hold a job. Patty,
Well, the day I turned 16, I went to work for the pharmacy at the lake, Silver Lake Pharmacy, which is where the dentist is now. And I worked for him for about 2 months, and across the street was the hardware store. And John Capiso, who owned the hardware store, used to come across every day and have a soda, which I would make at the fountain. And we would talk, and finally he says to me, probably sometime the 1st of November or so, he says, "Do you know of anybody else that wants a part-time job?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I suppose I could check around." I said, "What are you gonna pay?" And he says, "I'll probably 50 cents an hour." I said, "I'll take it." "Oh, no. He says, "I don't want to get in the outs with Max." He says, "No, we're friends." He says, I said, "Well, I'll ask him for a raise, and if he doesn't want to give it to me, I'll give him a notice." I don't want to be friends. So anyway, when Max came in, I said to him, I said, I work a lot, and I think I could have a raise. And he says, "What makes you think you're worth 135 cents an hour?" I says, "Well, I know where I can get a job for 50 cents an hour." He says, "Then you better take it." I said, "Okay." I said, "Do you want notice?" He says, "You don't need to give me notice." I said, "Okay." So when I got through work that day, I went across the street and told Johnny Guy. I went there till I got out of school.
very good. Charlotte?
Oh, I babysat, worked in Sylvania, in Wakefield one summer. Bob, my sister and I worked in Good Rubber over in Watertown. I'm not sure how we got home from there. We had a ride in. During high school, we worked in Jordan's basement in Boston. They had early release day on Monday, and Ann and I didn't take part in the activities. We took the train into Boston and worked. They gave us $1 for lunch, which was more than we would. We were getting paid, I think, 50 cents an hour.
Right, it's
It was
where Eastern Bank.
where the dance school is.
Eastern Bank.
It's dance studio.
Right.
Yeah. And then when I was probably 11 or 12, we used to walk from Beacon Street up the North Andover line to work in Trappers Farm. We walked every morning, every night. But
Beacon Street is by the police station, about
25 cents an hour.
25
I don't know
cents
how
an
we
hour.
done it, but we
You
did.
should have had Patty.
I didn't know the job was open.
He's older than me. That was
I know that,
the
I
time prices have gone up.
Go ahead, Paul. Was that it?
That's it.
Okay. All of you, I think, had mentioned that at one time or another you went into Boston. I'm curious as to how you got there, and if you did, and how long it took you to get there. Jack, you weren't allowed out of Wilmington.
Once a year, I'd go to Silver Skates on the train, and then if you were going to an activity at Boston Garden, you'd went by train. Other than that, I never went to Boston because there was no roads anymore. It took you to work.
Jim?
Well, when I was very young, my father would drive me to North Woburn and my mother, and we would take the bus across the street from my aunt and uncle's house and go to Sullivan Square and then take the subway. So then, when I worked for the Boston Music Company on Boylston Street, I would take the train from North Wilmington and then the subway from North Station. And coming back, some wise guy would always say, you know, in Massachusetts, we have Manchester by the sea, and we have North Wilmington by the smell. Which was Harriman and Stanner.
The Tanner.
Where was it?
Tanner, which was where, and then it became, isn't that where the Little League field was, right there?
That's right.
Which is, to let folks know where the kitchen place is, the RMA and the Registry of Motor Vehicles. That was in fact, I played Little League there.
WCTV.
WCTV, how could I forget that? All right, and what was the model car that you first went into to get your ride from your dad over into North Wilmington? What did he drive?
I don't know, but my first car was a 1936 Chevrolet. Oh boy.
Daddy, I know you took
What a wreck. No, it was a Model A. My father drove a Model A Ford.
Ford, okay.
What did I do?
Patty, how did you get into Boston?
Well, like for the skates and hockey games and the gardens, we were going by train. But normally, my mother and I would take the Eastern Mass bus and go into Everett Station, visit her relatives in Woodlawn, and then take the bus or the trolley into
Where did the bus pick you up in Wilmington?
Bus went from Lowell to Everett Station. In fact, for 15, if we were lucky, the kids at the lake got a quarter. We could get on the bus for a nickel and go to the center, go to the show for 12 cents, maybe get a little penny candy and come back home for a nickel. So we had a whole night out for a quarter.
Our mother loved to go to Boston, so we started going to Boston on the Eastern Mass bus. Walk out to the corner Western Mall, get on the Eastern Mass bus. I think it was 15, 30 cents. We'd go to Everett Station and take the subway into Boston. In the summer, my mother would take us into the movie theaters once. In the summer, it was a real treat. I mean, the movie theaters were so beautiful in Boston. And we'd go down to the public gardens, and we'd ride on the swan boats. We always went to Boston.
Barbara, can you add anything to that?
We used to go to the beach too, because she liked the water. We used to go to Dorchester, was it?
Yeah, she took us over to City Point
City
one time, and Revere Beach. We'd go down to Revere Beach on the bus, go to Malden Square and get a bus over to Revere Beach.
We were really well traveled for it.
You were very well traveled.
And my mother loved to go to Feline's Basement, the Dollar Day.
Paul?
Well, we never traveled to Boston very much. I can remember a group of us.
You never left Wilmington.
Don't they remind you of a commercial on TV?
Finish?
Yeah, go ahead.
So there was a bunch of talk between us fellas there at one time, I can remember. I think we were just in high school, about this building in Boston that we wanted to see, or heard about. So we skipped school one day, took the train in, and I think the place was called the Old Howard. That's the only time I was in Boston.
Probably why your wife didn't know that you went. You know, one of the chief complaints nowadays, of course, is traffic. So, did you folks experience any traffic issues or any problems like that meandering through Wilmington with the first time you were driving, for example?
There's only 3 traffic lights. There are many places that you get stopped.
Anybody?
When I was young, I would roll a tire down Salem Street, which is Route 62, from the North Reading line, where the dump was, to Woburn Street, and never worry about seeing a car bother me. Okay? If 5 cars went by in an hour, we would wonder, what's going on?
Traffic jam.
1998 and 1999, I counted the cars that went by my driveway. There were 15,000 vehicles a day went by, 1,700 to 1,800 large trucks went by. I'm sure that it has increased by now to 20,000.
Let me ask you a question. Which should you prefer? Rolling a tire for 12 miles or counting 15,000?
Actually, the counting, I was sitting still.
Well, I can remember them closing off the top of Pops Hill, right at the town hall, where you go down the hill.
Pops Hill.
Pops Hill, we called it. They used to close that off so we could sled down there, or we'd go down behind the big house, you know, there on the other corner, slide down on the hill down that way behind.
So you would slide down the hill where the town hall is now?
Where the town hall is
Towards the
now,
brook.
across the road from
Across.
the big house, what is it?
Yeah.
Nielsen.
Joyce's
Well, it
house.
was Joyce's, but it was Pop Nielsen's before that. And they closed off there, so we had the whole hill, you could go down around the corner, over the brook, with your sleds.
So Selectman Shampoo and Manager Holler here, they can probably arrange a nostalgia day. Stop the
Well, there
traffic.
weren't that many cars, and the few that were didn't mind going down Hamden Street so that we had our sledding place.
Charlotte?
We would walk to the Maple Meadow School, and the only cars we might see would be Mrs. Palmer or Mrs. Gallon's driving their kids to school.
The Palmers again, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
our father always had a car. I can't remember what it was, not then.
Yeah.
He always had a
He
car.
was a carpenter, and he needed a car, and he always had a car.
And when we walked to school, if we saw a car, we used to stop and look. We saw more cows.
Well, I can remember playing baseball at the corner of Columbia Street and Church Street. And I was the center fielder, and my position was out in the middle of Church Street.
On that note, first of all, I want to give a warm thanks to this. And I know there's so much more that they could add. And Tina, I know it's about 8:15. I don't know if there's time for any comments or questions from the audience, or and you have your apple pie back
We have
there.
to feed this crowd apple pie.
You do.
So they could continue the questions and the conversation. I thought the way we could do it is if we could start by the first row, we can get up and get apple pie and sit down. So I don't want to, I know people would like to share. Does that sound?
Yeah, and so maybe people can just, as they say, talk amongst themselves. And probably the best thing out of this is knowing that we shouldn't wait 16 more years to do it again. There are a lot of wonderful people that I know right in this audience that could offer so much, and I could see, people, agreeing with some of what was said. But I don't know if we've finally established what a townie is, but if we haven't, these 6 people certainly, whether they were born here or not, deserve that designation. Thank you all very much.
Get the pie and then come back to receipts. That would be great. If you don't want pie,
They sound like.
you're missing out.